Greetings Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News Channel. We are going to have a couple of guests join us later in the broadcast to help us kind of look back at yesterday's No Kings protests. And apparently we are not running on Rumble number 1. So let me shut everything down and I'll figure out why. And we'll be back in about, no, we are running. No, we are running. Almost shut it down. It's okay. I haven't shut it down, so we got lucky. We're okay. It's just a delay. Sometimes these things don't always start at the same time. Hang on. No, it's okay. We're fine. A couple of guests will join us on the program later to recap yesterday's No Kings protest. I'm going to try to wrap my head around what I'm supposed to say now. Okay. And we're going to dig into today's top news stories, including, of course, the most up-to-date information on the war in Iraq, maybe touch a little bit on what's going on in Ukraine, and the NDP has a new leader federally in Canada. So we will take a very brief pause, come back on the other side, and start digging into today's top news.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
All right, so right off the bat, the U.S.-Israeli campaign against Iran now in its 30th day. Still showing no signs of slowing. Overnight and today, coalition airstrikes hammered targets across Tehran, Karaj, Yazd, Bushehr, and the port city near the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state media reports at least 5 killed in the latest port strike, with widespread blackouts in the capital after power infrastructure was hit. Israeli officials say their campaign to degrade Iran's missile and nuclear sites is nearly complete. In retaliation, Iran launched a fresh ballistic missile barrage at Israel. One strike hit an industrial zone in southern Israel, igniting a fire at a chemical plant and causing damage and injuries. Israeli air defenses intercepted additional missiles headed towards central Israel. The conflict widened further as Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen fired missiles at Israel. Their first direct entry into the war, raising new risks to Red Sea shipping. On the diplomatic front, envoys from Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt are meeting in Pakistan today, trying to broker an end to the fighting. Iran says it is reviewing a U.S. proposal, but insists it will never accept humiliation. Tehran's parliament speaker warned today that any U.S. ground troops would be met with fire. The Pentagon has sent another 3,500 American troops to the region, with more expected. Casualty figures remain grim. Iranian officials and aid groups report more than 1,900 dead inside Iran, with thousands more displaced and critical infrastructure in ruins. Oil prices surging past $115 a barrel amid fears the Strait of Hormuz could be disrupted. Let's check the latest on gas prices in the United States tonight and see what is happening at the pumps. Major concern for everyone. So let's go to the AAA website for gas prices. Here we go. $3.98 national average. The high, $5.86. You go over to the West Coast for that, of course. California and neighboring states. Lowest prices in the central part of the United States and up into the northern states, northern central states. Current average, $3.98, $4.86 for premium. A month ago, $2.98. A year ago, $3.15. So quite a jump, and a lot of concern that it's going to get a whole lot worse. Let's check Canada. Here's the CAA gas price page. $1.71.9 per liter tonight. Is the average price in Canada. One month ago, $1.30.9. So, there's no question the war is having an impact on prices at the pumps, and there are concerns that we could soon quite easily hit $150 a barrel for oil, and concerns that it could go even higher to as much as $200. That's what some are predicting if the conflict isn't concluded in an expeditious way. So, with that, let's pivot back over to Canada since we're talking about Kazakhstan and fuel prices. One of the concerns expressed as a central issue at the NDP Leadership Convention. NDP, for our American friends, is a new Democratic Party. They were looking for a new leader, and they have one. Avi Lewis selected by the party. Here's how it went down.
809 votes.
Avi Lewis, 39,734 votes. 39,734 votes.
39,734 votes.
Leader of Canada's NDP, le nouveau chef du NPD, Avi Lewis.
The new leader of the NDP, Avi Lewis. Votes.
So he of course had a few things to say about U.S.-Canada relations and trade. Got you a clip from him here. Oops.
That's something that you are interested in maintaining, the new NAFTA, CUSMA, whatever you want to call it. Is that something that you are interested in maintaining, or do you think that Canada needs to get out of it?
I'm interested in protecting the auto industry. I'm interested in protecting unionized Canadian jobs. I don't think Kuzma really did that. It was a deal that Trump signed off on when he used to think trade deals were a good idea. Look, we're the party that fought the free trade agenda in the 80s and the 90s because we argued correctly then that we shouldn't integrate our economy with the United States to such a deep extent. And now that there is a character like Trump running the United States, we see how vulnerable we've become. The solution is not a single trade deal or a negotiation, which Trump doesn't have the attention span to complete anyway. It's to build Canadian industries, new industries, a 21st century electro state, renewable energy, a public option for groceries, investing in the public sphere. We have all of our proposals on our campaign that will Trump-proof the economy, and we need to get serious about using the vast resources of this country, not to invest in weapons and war, but to make Canadians safe, thriving, and healthy right here with our public healthcare system and services and a Canadian economy made in Canada.
But would you stay in a deal with a nation that is effectively, you would agree, is a fascist state?
No. But it's an academic question because these negotiations don't go anywhere because we're not negotiating with a reasonable partner.
Speaking of the U.S., I think the guy who kind of stole the show, certainly with respect to social media and what went viral from the leadership convention, was Wab Kinew, the premier of Manitoba, and he had this clip about the war in Iran, Donald Trump's war with Iran.
Let the Epstein class fight the Epstein war.
Oops.
A single Canadian should ever be put in harm's way to try and... Let the Epstein class fight the Epstein war. Not a single Canadian should ever be put in harm's way to try and defend Donald Trump's foolish Iranian war. And I'll go a step further, and I'll say no American either. No American child from the blue collar or the middle class should have to die in Iran. Let the Epstein class fight the Epstein war. Let the Epstein...
And, of course, we are dealing with the NDP, and they are on the left, and so you do get some of this, that the people on the right are having a feed, it's a feeding frenzy for them when we get clips like this.
Point. Let's hear the point on microphone 1.
I'm sorry, just real quick, point of personal privilege. I understand there's very little time and for delegates to speak, but early on the mic, it's hard as a racialized and transgender delegate to sometimes use this card and speak up, speak to somebody in front of me in line and ask, hey, this pertains to multiple intersecting parts of my lived experience. I'd like to speak. I was rejected when I talked, and it's frustrating when these are my rights being directly under attack right now in Alberta, and that a cisgender woman had spoken over me. And I understand her rights are important too. This pertains to her too, but I don't know. I hope that in the future the federal NDP will also have a broader interpretation of the equity cards for speakers. That's all. Thank you.
I will invite delegates to assist me in better using the card by forming a straight line behind the microphone with a prominently displayed equity card. If I see speakers ahead of you who are not holding a card prominently, it would be wrong of me to guess about their gender identity, and I will come to you. This applies so far, according to your rules, for gender identities other than a dude, but it is open to us to change our rules as we like as we move forward into the bright and golden future. Thank you, friends. Let's hear the balloting co-chairs.
Yeah. So, and And I'm going to take a little break here as we prepare to welcome our guests tonight. Stay with me. Oh, hang on. Where are we? There we go. We have more, so do not touch that dial. You can tell how old I am.
Maverick News isn't just a news outlet, it's a community of truth seekers. Your donation at freedomreporters.com fuels our mission to report the stories that mainstream media won't touch. Thank you, Maverick family.
Maverick News. Expose lies and tell truth. The world is watching.
And more from Wab Kinew, who was kind of put on the spot and is defending his comments on the Epstein class fighting the Epstein war.
Last question, guys. Sure. You used a term in your opening remarks, Epstein class. I don't think there was any intention there, but folks have pointed out that in some circles, it's been construed as an anti-Jewish dog whistle. Have you read those concerns? Have you looked into those concerns? And will you continue using that term Epstein class in future remarks?
Let me be absolutely clear. When I say the Epstein class should fight the Epstein war, I'm attacking Donald Trump.
You're not talking about
I'm attacking Jeff Bezos. I'm attacking Mark Zuckerberg. I'm attacking Jeffrey Epstein. I'm attacking Sam Altman. I'm attacking all of these folks who have articulated progressive views and yet bow down in the face of extraordinarily damaging politics today. And you tell me, why is the greatest military in the world at war without a reason that they can explain, without an exit strategy, and asking their allies who they've been insulting for the past year for help getting them out of danger? Because they went to war to distract from a domestic political problem. So this is all facts. Everybody out there knows that this is true. Every single person who sees this on social or video knows that this is true. And yet, for whatever reason, we can't talk about it in the public sphere. Like, I guarantee you won't report this. All the major mainstream outlets won't report this comment right here. Why is that? Something is true. Everybody knows it. Everybody's paying 70 cents more per liter per gasoline because of this nonsense in America, and yet none of us are allowed to talk about this in the public sphere.
Well, you've been talking
that
about
doesn't make anything. That doesn't make any kind of sense.
For about a week, so yeah.
Well, we carried it. I haven't seen, because I've been watching mainstream media, so I don't know if they've carried it or not. But I'll tell you this. I know that some people are concerned about the Epstein class, which is why I'm going to run this.
Guest list redacted, if you know what I mean. release the names to protect the victims. And also Donald Trump. Coincidence? Just dumb luck. Right? Another sealed file. That crocodile smile. We did our best, says the DOJ, while the truth just fades away. Another news spin. No one will win except the rich guys with gold ID cards and closets full of secrets behind steel bars. Just a little glitch. A billionaire's privilege. That's the sound of the case. Closed.
So tonight, Houthis fire another ballistic missile at southern Israel. We have video. Let me show you. Guests about to arrive, and we are going to be talking about the No Kings rally protests and a suggestion that the protests are anti-Christian. So we'll get a take on that when our first guest arrives momentarily, but this is what it looked like in Israel. And there are serious concerns tonight, as I mentioned last night, that the United States is burning through a lot of its sophisticated weapons at an alarming rate, having fired, I believe, about 20% of the entire Tomahawk missile stockpile already. And the war costing taxpayers upwards of $2 billion per day. Also concerns about stockpiles of Patriot missiles and some weapons being diverted away from Ukraine because of the war in Iran now. Tomahawk missiles worth somewhere around $2 million to $2.2 million a piece. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And here we have U.S.-Israeli strikes slamming into a target in Iran. Huge fireball exploding skyward. This video from RT. Viewer beware. Yeah. And I think our guest has arrived. Here's a close-up look here at fire burning at a petrochemical facility in Tabriz. Now this, there was supposed to be a pause on strikes against energy targets until April 6th, but I don't know. This appears to be an energy target, and it appears to be on fire. So I don't know if that pause is it really worth the words that were spoken. I'm not sure that it certainly isn't on paper. So there you go. All right. And just before we go to our guest, let me just cue up a little bit of video from the No Kings protests from yesterday. Varying accounts and estimates on how many people are out there. I know that there have been accusations against MSNBC saying they had recycled at least one video clip from last year's No Kings rally, or I keep calling it a rally, protest, whatever you want to call it. But estimates overall say that as many. Yesterday they said 7 million. Today I'm seeing people posting, including news organizations, saying 8 million. I don't know how you verify those numbers. Here's an aerial shot. And you can easily see the location. And that's a lot of people. A lot of people. Let's bring our first guest of the evening in, Joseph Leonard from Detroit. We're not reviewing a movie, but it looks like a TV show.
Unfortunately, yeah, it kind of looks like a Clancy-made novel turned movie, huh?
Actually, yeah, like that does look like an opening shot for a scene in sort of a spy thriller or
it
something. It
could
right?
be an opening shot of Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You movie.
Yeah,
Hello, Hollywood.
Get your book made into a movie. Yeah. So,
but as to those
back.
numbers, can you get 8 million? I think that might be estimated high, but okay, let's bump it up to 10. 10 million? Confused people out of 350 million? Okay.
So, I have no idea how you verify a number like that.
I won't dispute the number. What? Okay.
All right. So the reason I invited you on is because you sent me an email message, and I am going to probably keep you to about a half an hour tonight, because then I have another guest coming on right after you. So when they show up, we'll jump off, and then I'll pick it up with him, because Chaplain Paul is going to join me after I'm finished with you from Arizona. But explain why you sent the email to me, and I'll just let you explain what it was you said to me. So
and first, I love the clickbait title for the show.
I don't think there was any title.
Triggers the right. There are no kings.
Right.
Triggers.
Okay, that wasn't the title. Yes.
Yeah. No.
In the thumbnail, there's no words.
Right.
Actually,
no, logic and reasoned, historically accurate response to, once again, the left triggered TDS.
Okay.
No kings, which they. I hardly know where to start, especially. I won't get it all.
Here's the main reason I asked you to jump in, because in your email you said these protesters are anti-Christian.
Yes.
So that was like, okay. Let's get Joseph on and please explain.
And I will no doubt forget some things. So
Me too, because I'm old.
Yeah. Well, I dropped tinyurl.com, CTP on BitChute, or find Jay Lunder Detroit on Rumble. I did drop, because I did research for your show, and I figured if I'm doing research, why not do my own video exclusive? So yeah, tinyurl.com, CTP on BitChute. I dropped a half hour on this very topic there.
So why do you view these as anti-Christian protests?
Here, the simplest reason, and the research I did, I went to Google, pulled Isaiah 2:4 and Luke 22:36, how those play in a minute, but they don't know any history. One, no kings, okay? We ditched the monarchy 250-ish years ago. Now, have you guys replaced Queen Elizabeth with King Charles on your money yet? If anybody's still tied to monarchy, it's kind of you guys a little bit more worshiping. But we
don't worship. We don't worship the king.
Wrong, bad
in fact,
word.
I will. In fact, as we
Wrong
progress,
word.
I might clarify, which even most Canadians don't understand the role of the monarch in Canada. But anyway, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize. Absolutely wrong word. Wrong
It's all right.
word.
Even people up here, it's all right.
Yeah, but the left, the cultural Marxists, don't know U.S. history. They don't know even the Antifa history of the creation of that movement. They don't know anything. We threw off monarchy 250-ish years ago, and what was the battle cry of the revolution? No kings but King Jesus. So what they're really out there saying is they reject King Jesus. They are anti-Christian. If any of them, they are cultural Marxist atheists. Or if they pretend to be Christian, they are Matthew 23 types, as Jesus said, vipers, snakes, blind guides. How do the two scriptures fit in? This ties into the no war. For all things there is a season, right? Blah, blah, blah. Which one do I want to read here first? First, I want to read Isaiah 2:4, which they would quote as no war scripture if they want to pretend to be Christian. It describes future time of peace where nations beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Okay, yes, but the whole reason I created Constitutionalist Politics, the whole Bible in full context. Luke 22:36 from King James, let me be specific, blah, 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 blah. Luke 22:36, where Jesus tells his disciples, then said he unto them, because, I'm not perfect. I don't have the scriptures memorized, so I have to look things up from time. I know what's there, but I got to look it up. Then he said unto them, but now he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip, and he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. Buy a sword. Be ready to fight physical battles and war. For all things there is a season. So no war. They literally are out saying, don't fight the asshole tolas that chant death to America and death to Israel. They side with the asshole tolas who want to nuke Tel Aviv and New York City. And I dare remind again, Rick, if they do that, they don't need an ICBM. They could put a dirty nuke on a ship in international waters, detonated off NYC, and tens or hundreds of thousands of Kazakhstanian landers will perish in the nuclear fallout. So this is your war too for those in Canada protesting our actions. And to the top, you said, an energy target on fire. Well, did we strike it or did Israel? Israel didn't promise that. Trump did promise a delay, but that's a whole other thing. So again, those two scriptures, no, people, are not contradictory. You have to look at the Bible in its full context. It applies one way at certain times. It applies the other way at other times. So they aren't just anti-Western, and that means Canadians also. They are anti-Christian. They are pro-Gijas, global Islamic jihadist interim army soldiers who want to destroy not just the Jews, but all Christians and all Western nations and culture. They, again, this is a percent of a percent. Not all Shias even, which isn't all Muslims, even a percentage of Shiites who believe in the 12 occultism, who want to reign in Armageddon.
Where are you getting this battle cry, no kings but King Jesus, in U.S. government documents, or
it doesn't?
Where are you getting? Look, what's your? I don't know. Where's your source? Because I'm not aware of that being. I think it's been used, but I think that it's even been being used in Britain. It's been used in Europe prior to the revolution. It is, and I don't know that it was
Magna Carta-ish.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that.
Yes. Okay. Good question. Great question. I love the question. Logic, reason, response. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. It's not in the Constitution, but a lot isn't. You have to read the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, all our founders' memoirs to understand the Black Robe regiments. No king but King Jesus. It's there for those who want to look. The left doesn't want to know. They don't know. They don't want to know. They only care about their cultural Marxist delusions. So thank you. Good question, Rick. Thank you for giving me a chance to clarify that.
Yeah. To clarify the role of the king. See, in Canada, yes, we still have the king. But our king is not the dictator that, I think generally Americans think that he is. He does He does not rule over us.
I understand that. A lot of people don't, though. Yeah.
No, and the reason for that is that, contrary to what some people who are Canadians even up here who are trying to tell us that our country is not real, that that our Constitution isn't real, and that the king is a dictator. See, the reason that he's not a dictator is that he doesn't actually
have direct rule.
He doesn't create the laws.
You have the parliamentary
and
body.
So the king, the crown is. And they'll say it's just a corporation, and it is a corporation, but it's not a corporation.
US, yes.
It's not a corporation like McDonald's. It is something that's referred to as a corporation sole, SOLE, not OUL, not SOUL, SOLE, and it's a legal entity that continues on even beyond. Like the death of a king, or when the queen passed away, and then the king came in, and now King Charles reigns as the monarch, and when he passes away, then his heir will succeed him. But the monarchy continues, and all of the trappings that come with that belong to the monarchy, not to the individual. And the king doesn't create the laws, but does give them royal assent, and the king's role is simply to make sure that proper procedure has been followed in passing those laws, that it's gone through all the proper stages, so that it is a law that comes to him using the democratic process. And if it passes all of those steps, then he signs off on it, and it receives royal assent, and then it becomes law. But he does not rule over us. And to further reinforce my point, when the king recently came to Canada, when Carney became the prime minister, and Carney, he actually, Parliament through Carney summoned the king as a servant of the people to come to Canada and appear in Parliament. And then the king read what they call the throne speech, which explains what the government's agenda is.
But this isn't convenient to the left.
No, and so then, but the most important point is that when the king read the throne speech, he didn't write it. Parliament wrote that speech for the king to read. And
now
so
that part I didn't know.
Yes, and so when the king read the throne speech, they were not his words, they were the words of Parliament. Thus,
Thank you.
And in the House of Commons, which is the House of the people, so they were actually the words of the people, spoken for the people by the king, who is a servant of the people, who came to Parliament because he was summoned to perform his duty as the king, as a servant of the people. And people don't understand that.
No,
they just have this idea of a king wearing a crown with all these trappings and the gold and all of this stuff around him, and they think that he's a dictator and that he has all these extraordinary powers, and really he doesn't. And that largely goes back to the Magna Carta, which says that even the king is not above the law. The people in the streets, though, don't you think that really most of them, Joseph, were out there because they were really protesting against Donald Trump and their perception, whether you agree with it or not? They were out there protesting against their perception of a president who, in their view, is guilty of some sort of government overreach and maybe doing end runs around legal process.
Two things. Again, thank you for clarifying the one thing even that I didn't know and understand. Two, I was being hyperbolic and teasing you. And again, I apologize. The wrong worship was absolutely the wrong word to use.
It's okay. It's fine.
But I was being hyperbolic in my joking with you about your connection to the Queen and the King still. You know, that's the loving Jeff. Because you're right. I know better. But sadly, a lot of U.S. citizens don't know our history, let alone your history. So, and sadly, fellow Canadians up there don't know. So much more we could go into. Again, please see tinyurl.com, CTP on BitChute for more, or find Jay Leonard Detroit on the Rumble after this show is over to check that out. I go into more. But to your corporation point, I put the Detroit sign back up, right? Same thing. The U.S. is an incorporated government in the way you said it. Detroit itself is an incorporated municipality.
Every municipality in Canada
Townships,
is too,
townships have a different kind of incorporation charter. But you're right.
Because they have to conduct business, so they create a business entity that they can write checks through. And in addition to that, what people also don't understand is that the reason these corporations are created is that now you have basically a business entity, which then allows a government entity like a municipality to enter into contracts with people, with contractors like snow removal companies, or if you want to privatize your garbage pickup, which is what happens here, they have a contract with the municipality. And then if there's any kind of a legal dispute, there's something to actually sue that is on a level playing field. It's one business against another business at that level. But of course, so they can then enter into a legal remedy through the court system on an even playing field. Otherwise, you're fighting against a government entity that can make up rules as it goes along. And there is that element to it, but with a corporation set up, you at least have a fighting chance, right? And a resolution process available to you. Although, even as a corporation, a municipality has certain rights, or I would say even obligations as an entity, a government entity. So they can do things that other corporations sort of can't, which is to say have their own police force. Although a corporation can have their own security company. So there are just these nuances in the way things are handled.
I'd like to further this point. In the case of like a citizen suing the corporate entity of the city or the state or the nation, you are at that, and you're right. Again, I want to say this before I forget. It's different than McDonald's or Burger King. But when you go to sue Detroit, you aren't the citizen or the resident. In a way, you're a sole proprietor suing that corporation.
Or an individual citizen, or you could be another corporation or an LLC or whatever.
But
you
to
might
drive
be.
home the business angle point of it, again, in court, you are kind of a sole proprietor suing another company.
Yeah. But anyway, back to the main point, because our other guest has, arrived in the back room. And so I'll just throw this up. Like, I think that the people out on the streets protesting, Donald Trump in general and the Trump administration, and then specifically focused on things like this, which is an image of him as the king that he posted on social media, and he's done it multiple times. And this
I don't blame
November
him for
24th,
mocking it.
2025.
Hell, I would too. I think that's hilarious. But let's make the point. It's not just about Trump. This is the left, cultural Marxist. It goes, they called Nixon a Nazi. They called Reagan a Nazi. They called GW and HW and Mitt Romney they called a Nazi. Oh, worse than Hitler. And of course, J.D. Vance next. Oh, he's worse than Hitler. Blah, blah, blah. You don't understand anything. And they say these things because, unfortunately, 8 million morons who don't know anything are useful idiots, easily fooled into that kind of stupid. Thank you for having me, Rick.
I love having you on, Joseph. Is there, before we bring our other guest in, is there anything else you want to focus on or
no,
mention?
Again, tinyurl.com/CTP on BitChute to see the other arguments. Plus, I have music videos, tough love gospel, further going into biblical scripture, necessary rain for Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday. No kings but King Jesus. I have a song on that. That's in the video. Clickbait everywhere. I threw that on the end too, dedicating it to you for your clickbait title tonight.
Okay. And you just to clarify for people as we segue into Chaplain Paul, it's your position that the United States is a Christian nation.
Judeo-Christian foundations, yes.
Okay. And can you elaborate on that? Just explain a little bit further what your position on that is, because we're going to continue the conversation with Chaplain Paul.
Again, Jefferson, separation of church and state, not in the Declaration, not in the Constitution. It is a letter that that Jefferson wrote that the left warps out of context. It doesn't mean religious people can't be involved in government and that somehow we are only secular and devoid of our Judeo-Christian foundations. Again, that battle cry, no king but King Jesus. Read the writings about the Black Robe regiments. In fact, April 3rd, I think, a new movie starts on just this, our revolution, and indeed the no king but King Jesus for the Holy Weekend and our 250th anniversary. See the movie. I can't think of what it's called, but It'll be out, I think, April 3rd. It starts from Angel Studios, I think, the Christian Studios. That'll cover a lot of this, too. Please see that movie. Learn something, leftist morons.
One last thing. On the nuclear threat, what did you make of J.D. Vance and his comment about a terrorist maybe blowing him or herself up wearing a nuclear vest?
I didn't hear that, but again, it does make the point I was making, and I make over and over in terror strikes coming soon to a city near you. You don't need a perfect nuclear weapon and an ICBM to deliver it. Anyone can strap a tentative, that's not the word I want, but you know what I mean, right? A crude nuclear radioactive device to them, or put one on a cargo ship off New York City, detonate it, and 100,000 Canadians are also dead in the fallout.
So it's
possible, yes. Possible, yes. Probable, no. But yeah, I don't want those odds even to continue.
Okay. Is he still there, or did he get up and leave? I was going to introduce you to Chaplain Paul.
That'd be great. Yeah,
jump out. There he is. He's jumping back in his chair.
Okay,
he is ready. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna just before you go, I'll get you to say hello.
I love this. Yeah, I've never met him, so
hello
there,
Chaplain Paul.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes,
Okay,
we
perfect.
can.
And what's your name, sir?
Joseph M. Leonard.
I was listening to you. I didn't see the whole segment, but a lot of what you said is accurate. I have a little preparation here. And
I deal in reality and facts here, yes.
I can appreciate that, sir.
Reality and facts? What's that?
Yeah, right. Oh, nobody wants those. Right. Just give me the TikTok headline, fake news headline on the subject instead. I got a song on that. Well, it's tacked on there. Clickbait everywhere, indeed. So good meeting you, Chaplain Paul. Take care. God bless.
You know what? Remember this. Jesus loves you, and so do I. Spread it around.
Okay. Yep. Amen, brother. Amen.
It must be Sunday.
God bless, Rick. I'll talk to you later.
And Joseph, give some thought to what movie you want to review with me the next time, okay?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I really wish we could do Looker, but as you said, 1980s.
Well, we could review it. We just can't run the movie, right?
Because there we go. Yeah, we can't do it as a midnight matinee. Okay. But yeah, I'd love to review Looker because it's the predecessor to Simone with Al Pacino, so we could talk about that a little, because Tilly Norwood, of course, the AI actress, is in the news, so it's both news and movie review.
All right, and with that, we'll take a little break, and we'll come back, and we'll continue with Chaplain Paul. Thank you, Joseph, for joining us tonight. Okay, we'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right, we are back, and thank you for joining us, because after I received this message from Joseph earlier today, I reached out to you, Chaplain Paul, to ask you to come on tonight and reflect on what he just said, get your thoughts as well, and maybe discuss not just the protests, but the state of the nation and the division and this whole, I guess, idea that the United States is a Christian nation, and that what the protests were about over the day yesterday was that they're anti-Christian somehow. So I don't know. Do you have any initial thoughts after what you heard and from our discussion earlier today that you might want to start with an opening comment or anything in that regard?
Well, first, let me thank you for having me on the show, Rick. You're my buddy from Canada, all right? So the deal is Joseph and yourself, I must admit, are a lot more knowledgeable about this particular issue than I am, as far as the Constitution and Canadian Constitution and the ins and outs and all of that. You have me at a disadvantage. But if you're talking about like my personal opinion and how I relate things to my beliefs and what I do know about how our nation was founded, I'd be happy to share those thoughts with you. I would say that we go in like opinion, belief, and fact, and I'm not perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess we should, preface all of this by letting people know that down in Arizona, where you live, you advocate for and work with people in long-term care facilities. And maybe you can just explain a little bit about what you do so that people understand where you come from on this.
I've been a healthcare activist for over 30 years because my parents were poorly treated in our healthcare system before they died in the 90s. And then after that, I became a Christian community chaplain serving in long-term care ministry. I've been doing that on and off for 16 years. There's a variety of things I do. I bring stuffed animals in. I bring cheesecakes in periodically to give to the staff. I've been heavily involved with contacting our elected officials, testifying down at the state capitol, urging them to craft laws that would better improve the safety and quality of care in Arizona long-term care, only to find out that the laws already exist. There's state and federal long-term care laws that are constitutional, civil, patient, and human rights laws that already exist. Well, if they already exist, why aren't they being enforced? They're not being enforced because we live in a time where when the government decides, hey, you know what, we're going to ignore these laws and see what the public does. And if the public does nothing, then they get away with murder, and that's where we're at right now. The public does not have the fight in them to say, hey, look, the laws exist, enforce the laws, protect our rights, or we're throwing you out of office. We don't have that fight in us anymore. No, everybody's so caught up in trying to make a living and just try to get through the day that we don't have the ability to focus on these issues to the degree that we can help to make society better for everybody. The thing about what you were talking about, I'm a thinker, Rick, okay? And so when you said, would I be on the show tonight? I was like, oh no, okay, well, because you threw some heavy stuff at me, and what you're going to get is my initial thought. You see what I'm saying? If I had some time to really dig in, especially to this right here, this is the Founder's Bible, one of the Bibles that I have. This has American history in it. I'm an American history buff, like I told you. Mm-hmm. And it explains the history of why the country was developed the way it was, how Judeo-Christian values helped to set the foundation to build on. It's a foundation to build on. It's not.
Yeah.
I'd have to say that the Founding Fathers did not create a government that forces Christianity on people. Because if you're a true Christian, you know it's not forced. You invite people, and they make the choice of free will, whether to accept Christ or not.
Yeah.
When you have a government that forces a certain religion on people, then that is that's a bad deal. That excludes everybody else. America was founded on bringing people from all around the world, all different religions, walks of life, races, belief systems, and somehow having us live in a land where we could somehow get along, which is a miracle in itself, and build a nation that helps to be a light and an example for the entire world. Well, what's happened now is things have gotten out of whack. Okay. It just has. You were talking about.
Well, let me maybe help the conversation along here a little bit. See, when Joseph, this is, I think, the second time we've discussed whether the United States is a Christian nation, right? And I disagree with the premise that it is a Christian nation. I agree that it was founded with principles, ideas that heavily influenced the U.S. Constitution, U.S. laws, the U.S. legal system, the political system, everything about it. But to say that it is specifically Christian, I think is an error. And you just have to look at the Constitution itself, where even in Article 6 it says, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Which is to say that the God mentioned in, in any kind of a legal way is generic. It is not specifically a Christian God per se, because the Constitution actually never even once mentions Christianity, Jesus, the Bible, or even God. It starts with we the people, not we the Christians. Then I just mentioned Article 6, and even in the First Amendment, it says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, which is really what you're saying, which is that Christianity is not forced on anyone. You're free to practice any religion within the country. Like any citizen can practice any religion they want, but that the laws, your rights do come from a higher place, from God. But that's part of a natural process, even if you look at, and you see the U.S. Constitution, U.S. legal system is really based on English common law, British common law, that system. And the philosophers who influenced that also influenced heavily the U.S. and Canadian legal systems, which are based on common law, except in Quebec. It's a little bit different there because they came from France. But philosophers like John Locke, who, he was a Christian, but even his work was not just a way of echoing or pushing forward ideas, ideals, or morals from the Bible. It didn't just take from the Bible and then put it into the philosophy. It influenced his philosophy. He expanded on that, and then his work as a philosopher influenced U.S. law, the U.S. legal system, the political system, Canada. So not to say that Judeo-Christian values are not heavily influential throughout the U.S. system, but they are not embedded in the law itself. And because the founders wanted a religiously neutral government, they specifically made reference with language to keeping it thus, so to ensure that there was freedom of religion. Contentious, controversial, topic of discussion, even today. We'll certainly not reach complete resolution on this discussion tonight, if it ever is fully resolved. But this is also why you have so much division in the country, I think, right now, and always, because it's something that is often misinterpreted or twisted, used by political groups, by churches at times for various people for their own particular reasons, but they will use this idea that we're a Christian nation, and that in itself, I think, is a way of kind of doing an end run around the Constitution. I don't agree. Joseph is not alone in his view that the United States Constitution and the U.S. legal system is Christian-based and that the country is a Christian nation. But the United States is not a theocracy. Iran is a theocracy. It is, committed to Islam. You have Muslims who run the show in Iran. In the United States, you have people of all different faiths, all different backgrounds. There are references to God, but not a Christian God. It is a religiously neutral country, and there are legal precedents that have been set all through the years, going back to, I think I looked up a little bit of case law even after I spoke with you this afternoon on this. I'd have to find my notes on it again, but there are a number of legal precedents that have been set through case law where they specifically say that the United States is not a Christian nation. I'll see if I can find those notations, but I'll throw it over to you for a comment.
See, what you said, right, Rick? Mm-hmm. Okay. You're looking at United States from Canada, right?
No, I'm looking specifically at U.S. law.
No.
So,
Watch what I'm saying.
But I am a Canadian, sure.
Well, I know, but watch what where I'm going with this. Watch this, okay?
Yep.
What you're saying is accurate. The problem is when you're living in a nation like America and you think a certain way, you're in it. You're not seeing it from the outside. See, you are touching on something very, not too many people have touched on. I always thought that America was a Christian nation because of the fact that there's a lot of Christians that live in America. Okay, so if they said there's so many Christians that live in America, so if you had to, like, the nations around the world, if you had to put it on a scale and say, okay, well, this nation is Hindu, this nation is Buddhist, most of the population is that particular belief system. Well, in the United States, I always thought of it as Christianity is the more prevalent.
It is the dominant religion. It's certainly, most the religion that is practiced most in the United States is Christianity. But even within that, you have different kinds of Christianity. You can be an evangelical, you could be a Catholic, a Protestant, a Presbyterian, a Baptist. And this is also one of the reasons that the founders wanted to keep the country religiously neutral. I mean, even within Christianity, you have conflict. Look at what, when Kennedy was elected, religion was this big deal because, oh my God, we elected this president and he's not in our religion, right? Religion was a big deal when Kennedy was elected. These are issues that even within Christianity itself, there is conflict. And so if you say that you're a Christian nation, okay, but like which kind of Christianity? And how much value is there in that? And so even now I mentioned this to you as well, so I did look up a little more information on because it was just off the top of my head, but there's this Treaty of Tripoli, 1797 here. So I brought up the passage, as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. This is a treaty signed with a Muslim nation to deal with Barbary pirates, right, during that time period, because at the time, the United States not exactly a superpower. They were kind of a weaker nation, much weaker than they are today, not entirely dominant, and they had to kind of use diplomacy back in those days to deal with hostile or potentially hostile nations, and you had Muslims who were sailing the seven seas too, right? And they were at times coming into contact with U.S. warships, and so they signed a treaty in 1797. And because they were dealing with a Muslim nation, they stated very clearly in the treaty that the United States is not specifically a Christian nation, and was not interested, therefore, in pursuing any kind of a Christian crusade against other countries, to embark upon some sort of a holy war, which had been historically a big source of friction and a cause of many wars in the past, historically, right? So the United States, dealing with Tripoli, they were like, hey, we're not hostile to you. Yes, we're Christians, but our government is not a Christian-based theocracy or a Christian-based government. We're not going to go to war with you over religion, not for religious reasons. So you don't need to worry. And so they signed that treaty, which remained in effect for some time until they fought anyway over other things. But that being said, it's one of the documents that's most often cited to highlight the, I'll say, argument that I'm putting forward here tonight, to show that legally, constitutionally, the United States is not a Christian nation. I understand that and I absolutely acknowledge that there are Judeo-Christian foundational aspects in a very major way to the United States. No question about it. It influences everything about the society. But legally, it is a religiously neutral country for a reason. The founders wanted it that way to ensure that everyone had freedom of religion. Because I think you stated earlier, what was it you said to me about separation of church and state? How was it that you viewed it? You said it's not just separate church and state specifically, but you had a particular view that.
Okay, this phrase comes from a letter written. Joseph said this. This phrase comes from a letter by Thomas Jefferson. Its purpose was to prevent government from controlling religion, not to remove faith from public life. It protects the church from the state, ensuring people can practice their beliefs freely without government interference. Well, right now, what happened, because the church this is my opinion, okay? Yeah. And it's fact. I mean, look it up. Because they have a tax exemption, I believe that they're less likely to become activists fighting for social justice. I believe that. I believe when you have situations like in long-term care and when you have homelessness to the degree we have, and you have people that are being discriminated against and there's racism and other issues, and the church is silent on these issues, it's because they don't want to lose their tax exemption. I believe it. My own church, I went to my church that I graduated from, right, as a chaplain. Mm-hmm. I went there and I said, I talked to the head pastor. I'm not going to name the church. I said, at some point, I'd like to come in and tell you what my activities have been over the years. And he said, okay, Paul, when you're ready, come in. Well, God led me. I was there praying one day, and I went to the office. And I mentioned, here's my contact. I'd like to talk to, a leadership about what I've been doing and what's going on in these facilities. Well, a guy calls me up, a pastor calls me up. He was very nice. He said, Paul, I watch your video, I watch your hearings, and, you're very articulate. You represent the Lord well. And we talked. We had a good talk. Then after that, he never talked to me again. I didn't know why. So I asked ChatGPT, believe it or not. I said, well, what's going on here? It says, because of what I'm involved in, it's better to ignore me than to accept what I'm doing. See, if they acknowledge what I'm doing, they're going to know that they have a responsibility to do something to help these poor people. So their way to deal with it is not even acknowledge me. Okay, when you have your own church, it doesn't even acknowledge me when I'm begging them, please. There's people being raped and beaten to death in these facilities by mentally ill patients and by violence, by abusive staff and by other mentally ill, violent patients.
Right.
Patients sexually and physically abused, waiting all night long to be changed, treated like animals, dying because of very serious complications due to neglect, isolation, abuse, mistreatment. And I go to my very own church and say, look, we really got to, look into this and try to get volunteers in there and bring the love of Christ into these facilities and protect these people. I'm ignored. Welcome to my world.
Well, if I can just come back to what you were saying about separation of church.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm
state.
sorry. I got off.
Yeah, it's okay.
Right,
I know because you're passionate. You're down there in
Right.
Arizona.
No. I got you. I got it.
So,
okay.
Your view is that the references to separation of church and state are that the true meaning is that it's to keep the government out of the church, but not to keep the church out of the government.
Look at what I do, right? I contact our elected officials. The word says that we are the church. It's not made of brick and mortar and wood and shingles. We are the church. We are the living church, okay, of God, of Jesus Christ. What am I doing? I get in contact. I contact our elected officials. I try to tell them what's going on. I urge them to craft laws.
Sure.
I urge them to protect our rights, to enforce
Protect
the
the
laws.
rights. That's their job. That's to protect
our rights,
not
enforce
give
the
them
law.
to you. Yes.
I come to them with the word of God that we're commanded. If they're Christian, let's say, I could say, "Hey, look, this is what it says in John 13:34 and 35. We're to love one another as Christ loves us." Look at in Luke chapter 10, 25 through 30. 10:25 is my birthday, by the way. It's the Good Samaritan. Okay, treat others as we would want to be treated. Help those that are suffering. Don't just walk by.
To focus the conversation again, the issue that I do take with that concept, it's separation of church and state, is not to separate church and state, but to prevent the government from to keep the government out of the church, not to keep the church out of the government. I would say to that doesn't work. You can't be a little bit pregnant, right? It's like you're either mixing it or you are not. And if you say that the Christian church has a place in running the government, but the government doesn't have a place in running the church, then what you're really saying is that the church takes legal precedent or has more power than the government itself. And because it has the ability to influence or to even, I would say, control government, you're now saying that the laws of the land are Christian-based, and therefore it becomes autocratic instantly. It turns it into a theocracy by default, and it also by default becomes oppressive to other religions. Even if you say that people of other religions can practice any faith they wish, it's still oppressive because you are giving permission, that Christians are giving permission to others to practice their religion. And so therefore you are giving them the right to practice their religion, saying it's okay, you can be a pagan if you want to be. It's okay, you can be a Muslim if you want to be, because we allow it. And therefore, we give you your rights. And you see, therein lies the rub, because now you are taking the place of God, because you are administering the rights to the people below you by turning the entire governmental system into a Christian theocracy. All of the laws then become Christian laws. The way that those laws are administered, the way they're interpreted by the courts, it becomes a Christian perspective in the way that every law is interpreted. And therefore, if you are living as a Muslim or any other religion or a Hindu, doesn't matter what it is. If you're a First Nations person and you're practicing your own faith outside of Catholicism or whatever it is, if you're not a Christian, you are being forced to live a Christian existence within a Christian system, even though you're being told that you can practice your religion, but you're being held to a Christian standard with your religion. That in itself becomes oppressive, and it puts that religion above all others by default. So it can't work. The truth of the matter is there is separation of church and state. Legal precedent acknowledges that. I did look up the couple of pieces of the case law. There's a case going back to like even 1947. There are a bunch of them all through the decades, especially since the 1940s, as this issue has become, more pronounced over time. So if you believe in freedom, which is what the United States is really supposed to be about, in Reynolds versus United States in 1878, Everson versus Board of Education, 1947, explicitly affirm the wall of separation. Government can't establish Christianity or any faith in public schools, laws, or official policy. It must remain neutral among all religions and non-religion. So these are legal
right. I got you.
aspects to it, right? Not moral, legal.
I got you. Here's the deal. All right, watch this. Okay, so we have separation of church and state, which means government cannot dictate what can be talked about behind the pulpit and run the church, okay, per se. Okay, I mean, obviously, if you're talking hate speech and everything else and you're causing a riot, so that's one. But what I'm saying here is separation of church and state was to keep the government out of the church. Okay, now then here's how we take it home. It also, because of what you just said, is accurate too. It also means that the church can't go and force the government to go to war with other countries to make them Christian. Okay?
That's right. So that's right, which is what John Adams and George Washington said. Not a Christian nation, not looking to renew the Crusades, right?
That's right. Okay. Yeah. See, you taught me something here. Thank you. Okay? You're teaching me a lot. So what I get from out of this is a very simple thing. The government should not be so embedded in the church that it's watching every move that they make and it's writing the sermons and, running the show for their own political power. Okay? On the other hand, the church can't be so embedded in the government that they're manipulating the government to go to war and to oppress people that aren't Christian. Okay, so we agree on that. I believe that. I believe that's the you provided the second piece of the puzzle here. Okay, it's not all one or the other; it's both. All right.
Yeah.
But when you have, let's take the Christianity thing out of it and put just the religion part into it. Okay, so the religion part is different faith groups. All faith groups have some sort of morality that can benefit mankind. Yeah. And if you don't have that moral compass engaging in government, what you wind up with is a totalitarian dictatorship. If you don't have that voice of reason and that morality constantly saying, look, you really can't do this. You can't be putting people in cages. Okay. They can't be living in tiny homes.
Right.
And going to work for 80 hours a week and like slaves.
Not everyone would want to be a live stream podcaster.
Just so you can have more money, more taxes, and more power. People need to be treated humanely and have a chance to be free and to live out their God-given talents and be a light of hope in the world and help to relieve suffering in the world and help to build a nation that's a model and a light for the world and an example for the world. So what we've accomplished here, Rick, is yes, Christianity can't be so oppressive that it becomes a government that tries to conquer the world in the name of Christ.
Nor do you want it to be the law of the land, right? Nor do you want your government to like if you interpret a piece, if you look at a piece of literature, just as you would look at the law, you look at that through a particular lens, right? From a particular perspective. If you have a law, you can look at a book, just a piece of literature, and you can interpret it different ways. If you're a Christian, you might look at it one way. If you are reading the same piece of literature as a Muslim, you would interpret it maybe an entirely different way because you're applying different moral standards, different concepts about what God maybe is to you, a whole host of things. When I was a student back when I was much younger and better looking, I had English teachers in university who said, I want everything in this course to be analyzed, critiqued from a Christian existentialist perspective. And so when we were writing all that entire semester, when I was writing my reviews or my reports on various pieces of literature that I had to read, I would have to write it from that perspective, whether I was Christian or I wasn't, a Christian existentialist point of view. And so you could write it from other perspectives. You could look at it, I don't know, as a redneck trucker from Kanakistan, right? And look at it through that lens if you wanted to, and write it from that perspective. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you have a set of laws, and the judge in a courtroom is interpreting that law, and you have someone accused of a crime before you, it could be murder. And if the charge is first-degree murder, and you're viewing what the law says, and you're a theocracy, and you're a Muslim or an Islamic nation, and you're interpreting the law, and you're looking at it through that lens, the degree of what the punishment should maybe be, or whether it's a crime or not, might be something entirely different, because if in that context, maybe the guy beating his wife, depending on the religious perspective, maybe that's okay with you. Maybe it's all right for someone to kill somebody for this particular reason, because you have this particular religious view that maybe gives the guy, well, he had a point. What else was he supposed to do? But if you're looking at it through a Christian lens, then that's not okay, and the guy has to go to jail. Or if you're looking at, the point is, you don't want either of those things. You want the rule of law to prevail. You want a system that is based on a set of principles, laws that have been established through time. In this case, English common law, which is predicated largely on Judeo-Christian values, whether you like it or not. That's where a lot of these concepts draw some influence from, but also from philosophy, this is why it's such a powerful and I think a good system, because it doesn't draw from just this or that. It goes all the way back to ancient Greece and Plato and Aristotle and John Locke and legal precedents that are still being set today to constantly refine the system and update it and correct the direction that the country is even going in, because it's always a living, breathing thing, right? And always open to revision to some degree, except for the Constitution, which becomes extremely difficult to revise because that's the core base, the core of the system right there. That has to be very difficult to change. Otherwise, you don't have a stable country. Am I making sense? Or am I losing everybody here?
No, you're making sense, and I'm absorbing it. You know what I'm saying?
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Watch this.
Yeah.
The Ninth Amendment was created to protect laws that are not written in the Constitution. The Ninth Amendment, as a matter of fact, I was driving down the road and I see 9 EM. 11 times I counted it. I go, what is this? So, God, what are you trying to show me here? So I thought, Ninth Amendment. I look it up and I'm like, oh, this is like the silver bullet. This is what I've been looking for. And I did a study on it. It's basic human rights that are not listed in the Constitution. The Constitution, we have the right to be married. It's not listed in the Constitution. We have the right to have children. We have the right to grow our own food. We have the right to have a job. We have the right to have clean water. Okay. But it's not listed because these are basic human rights. Well, these apply to long-term care. We have the right to be treated humanely when we're sick and suffering. Okay. It's just a basic human right that is embedded when the founding fathers said, we're going to have a right, the Ninth Amendment, we're going to add an amendment that carries basic human rights that are not listed, because we can't project where humanity is going to go in the future. Okay, so this is why they created the Ninth Amendment. All right. The thing is, people don't know, and people are they're not studied like you. They don't know this.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so let me
I
just
have
be
a
very
question
clear.
to you.
Sure.
I have a question to you. What are we supposed to do as a nation, a state? What are we supposed to do as a state, a nation, and a people when there are constitutional, federal, patients and human rights laws, rights, and regulations that are being ignored and not enforced? What are we supposed to do as a state, a nation, and a people? What are we supposed to do? Well, I'll tell you what, there's not much we can do, because when we don't have the will of the people to stand up and demand that laws be enforced and our rights be protected, and we don't have that demand, then we continue to be taken advantage of, because the corporations, these rights gets in the way of their profits. And they figured out a way to just diminish our elected officials and weaken them to such a degree that if they're going to if they're going to ignore these laws and rights, and nobody does anything about it, then they're getting away with murder. Well, here's my question to you: what are we supposed to do when laws that protect the public health, protect lives, and rights that protect the public health, safety, and lives and well-being of millions of people are being ignored and not enforced? What are we supposed to do?
Well, I think you do what you're doing and what I'm doing right now, and you draw attention to these issues. You do what you're doing, which is to bring solutions forward and demand action directly to your elected officials and people in charge, even within the bureaucracy. You know, you said to me earlier today that you don't vote because you're discouraged. I totally understand that. I still say people should vote because why, whether you believe it works or it doesn't, you do it anyway, because if you don't, then for sure it's not going to come out in your favor. But that being said, I also agree with you in that these protests, like the No Kings protests, largely don't provide solutions, because they're always focused on what people don't want. They're always focused on tearing something down. Generally, the people in the streets are being used as pawns by politicians, political activists, sometimes big corporations, other people behind the scenes that maybe we don't see, who have political objectives or self-interest in mind, and they're using people to get what they want, which is generally money and power, political power, so they convince people to go out into the streets, not to affect a solution, but to tear things down, to bring the existing government down so that they can then assume power and replace the government. In effect, what you've seen in the streets over the past couple of days is an effort to overthrow the government using democratic means by protesting, applying pressure. But that's to tear it down. I heard a lot of people giving a lot of speeches saying what they didn't like and what they wanted to have end, which is the war or the debt or you name your issue. But I didn't hear a lot of people offering solutions. That's the problem with protests in general. It's much easier to destroy than it is to create or to build. But you can't build, I guess, until you tear it all down and reset, if you will. So there's this constant process, and that's part of democracy in the United States and in Canada and on Western countries, as long as it's done peacefully and it's done using the democratic process, and it's not done in a way that is designed to subvert democracy. The problem, I think, that some people have right now is that what they're seeing in the White House is someone who, in their view, is subverting democracy in a variety of ways, whether it's deciding to tear down a big chunk of the White House without getting any prior approval from anybody, just making a decision to just do it, or just to go to war without adhering to any kind of international law, without getting approval from Congress, without checking with anyone, just doing it, and in for a penny, in for a pound. What are you going to do now? Well, I guess you better approve another $200 billion. And some people have an issue with that. They have an issue with someone who does continually, repeatedly post pictures of himself wearing a crown on his social media page saying, look at me, I'm the king. Whether he means it or if it's a joke, either way, it's an insult to the people. And some people take offense to it to the point where they're going to go out en masse, 8 million strong maybe yesterday, to say, no, you're not a king. You're not, and they're not protesting. I think in their minds, they might have the image of King Charles in their minds because they're fed this propaganda on the U.S. side largely about the British monarchy, which has its issues. But that being said, they're not protesting that so much. It's that they don't want a dictator. They don't want an authoritarian. And that's what they mean by a king. And I don't think, contrary to what Joseph's position is on this, I don't think that the people in the streets were taking an anti-Christian stance yesterday. I think that Joseph and many others, especially on the MAGA right, look at those protesters and they see what we saw at the NDP leadership convention this weekend, where they see transgender people or people they don't agree with. They see progressivism, they see wokeism, and they take issue with that. And they say, well, look at all those crazy communists in the streets. I don't like that. They're all anti-Christian. They're just having an anti-Christian rally, you see. And so he's kind of overlaying that. And you certainly have people with those political views that certainly clash with what his perspective is. But at the root of everything yesterday, at the root of it all, what really got people out into the streets is Donald Trump wearing a crown. Donald Trump with that video of him flying a fighter jet, that meme video. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't, where it says King Trump on the side of the jet. And then he's like dumping feces all over people at a protest. Because like he's dumping shit on his own citizens. And see, this is the issue I think people have too with Donald Trump, is that he's not being a president for all of the people. He's being the president for half the people. He's only being the president for his base. He has essentially gone to war with the other half. He is literally, in some sense, at war with liberalism, wokeism, progressivism, Democrats. He refers to them specifically as the enemy, but he is their president too, and it's his obligation. It is, if you will, his presidential fiduciary duty to serve all of the people, but he is not doing that. He doesn't give a damn about people's rights. He's just giving his base what they want, and they're cheering him on because they have been told rights don't matter. All that matters is that you get what you want. You get to be a Christian nation, or you get to say, screw those transgender people, or screw those people over there that you don't agree with. That's why he signs that executive order on language, making English the official language of the United States, which I didn't even know, and I made a mistake on the program making reference to it about a month ago or so, where I didn't know, and I said, well, the United States doesn't have an official language. I was wrong. Do you know I was wrong? Because he signed so many executive orders, you can't keep up with them. And that's also not democracy. And I think you mentioned this yourself, Chaplain Paul, earlier today in our conversation. This is a guy who rules with a Sharpie. There's no parliament. Congress doesn't matter. Senate doesn't matter. It's just him. He has purged all opposition from the bureaucracy, from government. No one stands in his way. He's got his sycophants, his minions in all of the places of government now through the use of Doge and his whole agenda. He's fired anybody that opposes him in any way, and then he sits behind his desk with a Sharpie and signs executive orders. Hundreds and hundreds of them. Those are laws that remain in effect while he's president of the United States, to the point where now it's like, if you're Spanish, good freaking luck. Nobody gives a damn about you. I was on his social media page today on Truth Social, and some stupid meme on there about Donald Trump's doing, with Donald Trump in the office, you'll no longer have to press 1 for English. Well, that's like giving a great big middle finger to anybody who speaks Spanish in the country, which is a large portion of the population, including people in Puerto Rico who don't even have representation, even though they're taxed. So they have taxation with no representation because they're not allowed to vote. So that's why I think people are out in the streets protesting and saying, no kings. That's why. So I'll throw it back to you, and, you tell me, because you live there. It's your country, man.
It's my thanks
Good
a lot,
luck.
Rick. Thanks.
Good luck.
Good luck.
We got our problems up here too, man.
Here's the garbage. Good luck. No, here's the deal.
But I love the United States. Don't get me wrong. You just got to get it back on the straight and narrow. Sorry for the little rant there.
Hey, listen. That's okay. That's what I'm here for. Okay. When I walk into a room, that's what I'm here for, Rick. Okay. This is healthy. Okay. Just look at me as your counselor and chaplain today to get it off your chest, and now you know what I mean, to get you back on good footing. Now you're the champion and maverick we all love. Okay,
I'm not a Catholic, but there was my confessional. But I was just confessing the sins of your president.
Get it?
Back
All
to
right.
you.
Now what? I'm going to pick stuff from you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I can't remember everything. So all right. The thing about Kennedy was that because he was Catholic, they were concerned that the Pope was going to run the show.
Yeah.
That was a real concern back then.
Yeah.
They were concerned that the Pope would have more power over John F. Kennedy, and that the Pope can dictate policy. Okay, that was a big concern. All right,
Sure.
That's valid. Why not? You know what I mean? The issue about me not voting, I do not tell people not to vote.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage people to vote. In my case, it's personal. All right. In my case, many patients I love died in isolation during COVID. No visits by family or clergy. I want everybody that watches this show to imagine your wife, your child, your mom, your dad, someone you love gets in a car wreck, goes into a facility, and you can't be there by their side to make sure the medical wishes are being honored, to make sure to prevent medical mistakes, to make sure they're receiving the love and compassion and encouragement and healthy foods that we all need to have a fighting chance for survival. Not allowed for over a year.
Right.
Not to have their chaplain or their pastor or their priest or their rabbi to come in, help them make sense of things, calm them down, get them on good footing so they don't need the psych meds and antidepressants, all denied for a year. So my position is very simple. Until I see someone with real backbone that's going to step up and defend our rights and publicly demand that our rights be honored and enforced, publicly demand that laws that have been on the books for decades, that are constitutional, federal and state laws, be enforced, and are going to have town hall meetings, hold public hearings, go out in the Senate and House floor and demand action to protect these people, I ain't voting for you. Okay? I don't care what you say. If you don't have that ability in you, if you don't have that decency and honesty and backbone and stomach and integrity and godly wisdom to fight for the sake of others that are downtrodden, forgotten, treated like animals, tossed aside like trash in society, if you don't have that in you, then we don't want you. Step aside, resign. There's the door. We don't need you. And so far, I haven't found anybody that has that in them. So I'm not voting for the lesser of two evils, because they're still evil in my book. Because we get nowhere. We get the bottom of the barrel. That's what we get. See, someone like Rick, okay, he would be a good candidate for a public office. He's very knowledgeable. He cares about the people, and he would be a very good candidate. Well, back in the day, the Democrats, the Republicans, they went out and actually looked for people like Rick, okay, and said, hey, would you like to run? And here's what Rick would say. No, I just want to do this. I'm not qualified. And they got to be nudged and they got to be supported. We said, we're going to back you. And we need you. Okay. And then that's how it was done. Well, now nobody wants to run. Nobody wants to get involved. So we get the bottom of the barrel. This is what I said in one of my videos. Here comes a Democrat with a 6th grade education. Doesn't know what our rights are, doesn't know how to defend them, uphold them, protect them, enforce them, doesn't know. And what do the Democrats do? They elect them because they're Democrat. Here comes the Republican who's got a 6th grade education. Here comes Jethro from the Beverly Hillbillies. Doesn't know what our rights are, doesn't know how to protect them, defend them, enforce them, doesn't know how to be a leader that fights for social justice and relieves suffering in the world and lifts up the nation. Doesn't know how to do that at all. But we're going to vote for him because he's Republican and we don't want the Democrats. So what you get is two morons. You get moron on the right and the moron on the left, and their job is to stop each other.
It's just, I couldn't help. I made this the other night because Joe Rogan was criticizing his own political base, and then some others are coming on saying that so many people in MAGA now are dorks. And Joe Rogan says, do we have to put up with these people? And it reminded me, so I made a bunch of these MAGA dork. And I said, better be careful, Joe, because these guys, they're going to get their revenge just like the nerds. But I'm in the dork side. Okay, I'm on their side. But anyway, back to you.
Watch this. To my brothers and sisters in Christ out there that are not doing anything, that are looking the other way when you have our brothers and sisters in Christ in these facilities that have been abandoned, all alone, raped and beaten. Okay. Physically and sexually abused, manhandled, tossed around like a rag doll, not cared for properly, not getting basic services, not receiving the love and compassion and encouragement we all need to have a fighting chance for survival. We're called to do that. I told Rick today, during the Black Plague, the Christians ran to the plague. Everybody ran away. When asked, why are you doing this? You risk getting sick, you risk dying. They say it's the least we could do. Our Lord died on a cross for us. It's the least we could do. Well, during COVID, it was me and Pastor Ken. Pastor Ken's in his 80s. That were going in to these facilities, going into the COVID unit that I fought to get torn down so the patients could get visits. Everybody around us, no, don't go. You're going to get sick. You're going to die. Well, you know what? We're called. This is what we're called to do. Not only as pastors and chaplains and priests and rabbis, we're called as Christians to go to the plague and help those that are sick and dying at our own expense. We're to be a living sacrifice, helping those that are suffering, lifting up those that are sick and dying, okay, placing service above self and reaching out and helping others for the glory of God. Well, what's going on here? Well, they don't want to do it. They don't want to risk anything. They don't want to risk that. They don't want to risk getting hurt. They don't want to go in and cultivate relationships with these people because they may die soon, and they don't want to risk it. How do I know that? Because I've had patients where I go in the room and say, has your husband visited you? Are you getting visits? No. It makes them too sad. They don't like coming in. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that your wife or husband gets in an accident or gets sick and is on life support, and the spouse doesn't want to come in because it makes them too sad, or the kids don't want to come in? Well, what you're actually doing is you're putting them through a living hell. You're denying them the love that they need, that only family and friends can give, and the body of Christ can give.
Can you speak a little bit about what you were telling me about politics and MAGA and the Republicans, especially in Arizona, where you've had some firsthand observations about money and the way that is sort of corrupting the political system, and what you're seeing down there?
In my opinion, you got a couple of issues here. I've sat with our elected officials where I could tell they're afraid to go into these places, literally afraid. I was sitting with a state senator, and I told her, I said, well, why don't we go in and we'll go like undercover. We won't tell them who you are. We'll go in. We'll just say we're scoping out for a family or friends. You'll walk those halls and see just what a horrible living conditions are that these poor people are going through. And she went like this. She looked at me and she shook her head like that. That little thing told me that she's too scared to go in. She don't want to see it. Because if she sees it, she knows that she has to acknowledge it. Just like the deal with my church. If they go in and they see it, then they have to acknowledge it. But if they just allow Chaplain Paul and Pastor Ken and the rest of us to go in and put our lives on the line, on the front line fighting for this cause, and they just sit back and say, well, we'll let them do it. We don't want to risk anything.
But what I'm kind of getting at is we had a little bit of a conversation earlier today about money and big churches, and when I look at like when the Democrats hold a convention, they talk a good game about social welfare and looking out for the little guy and tax the rich, but when you look up at the who's in the box seats up in the convention center, and it's big corporations here and big corporations there, and they're all funneling money into the political system. And then over on the Republican side, which is, I think, of most concern right now because you have a Republican sort of a MAGA president, right? But, specifically, what's going on with MAGA and the mega churches and the money, and you were making references even to, TPUSA. What's your view and what are your observations on the way the U.S. political system is being influenced that way by big money and even money coming in through big religion?
Well, the industry has our elected officials hoodwinked. If they actually stepped out and had town hall meetings, craft legislation to relieve suffering, actually go after, it's going to cost the industry money. So what do? They basically, I don't know this for sure, but at some point, I believe you get elected, they sit you down and say, here's what you can do and can't do. Here's what you stay away from, and here's what you don't. And if you don't listen, then we're just gonna censor you and ignore you, and you're not going to get anything done. So it's better to listen to us and do what we allow you to do than go off on your own and you're not going to accomplish anything. This is what I believe. I also believe that you have a lot of our elected officials are scared. You have a lot of our elected officials just don't give a damn. They're in it for the money. They're in it for the perks. They use their political platform as a springboard for other income. In other words, they're in there. They make their connections. They resign before their term is up. Right. They get a job as a lobbyist for a corporation, and they're making bank. And so when they're in there serving, they're not looking at, let me do the best I can. Not all of them. Okay. It's been my perception that there's some, not all. Okay. Let's get that straight. But it looks like it's a culture of where they get in, where part of the end goal is to make the connections. So when they get out of office, they got a very good income working for corporate. That's corruption at its finest. When my dad was in politics back east, he told me they were not allowed to write a book. They weren't allowed to do movies. They weren't allowed to do anything but serve. And they had an ethics committee that would watch them like a hawk. And if they went and did investments or they tried to make money on the side, writing book deals or doing movie deals, they were censured. Their job was to serve the people and not go in there and serve themselves at the expense of the people. Well, that's what we have now. They go in and serve themselves at the expense of the people. And then they do Mickey Mouse they do Mickey Mouse legislation, or they'll go do this or do that to make themselves look good. At the end of the day, let's peel away like the curtain with the Wizard of Oz. And here's what you have. You got gold diggers that are in it just to make the connections so they can make more money. The thing about the church that I told you, their tax exemption, I believe this. I believe it. Not all churches. A lot of churches do good. A lot of churches help the community. I'm not bashing all churches. What I am saying is that there's an element now that they're afraid of losing their tax exemption, so they're less likely to become activists for social change and justice, social justice. Mm-hmm. I mean, any society that turns a blind eye to rape and beatings of our elderly and sick and does nothing, very little or nothing, that's evil.
Yeah, and you're specifically referencing conditions in, well, for you, firsthand knowledge from these homes in Arizona, right?
Yeah, let me show you. I'll show you. Hang on. Hang on a minute. Here. This whole system has failed. Front page. This was a series of stories done by the Arizona Republic. Front page. Senior care centers face little accountability when residents and staff are sexually assaulted. This is on the front page. All right. Yeah. Then you had the Audit General's 2022 audit of our health services, where it was uncovered that there was hundreds and hundreds of very serious complaints of sexual and physical abuse committed against Arizona long-term care patients that were downgraded, dismissed without any investigation. What has been the end result? 2 or 3 public hearings, no arrests. I'm not talking about the perpetrators. I'm talking about the administrators that are dragging their feet, not enforcing the law, not protecting our rights. No arrests. No, you're supposed to have hearings that rein in these department heads, rein in our elected officials, and have some sort of punitive damage, punitive penalty if they're not going to enforce the law and defend our rights that protect the public health. And there isn't. It doesn't exist. Here's what I'm told by our elected officials. Well, the government doesn't police itself. Each department is sort of its own entity. Okay, the enforcement comes from the executive branch, the governor's office, and the attorney general. Well, here's what I found out. I'll be brief because I don't want to go off the trail here. Here's what I found. First, I found out the laws already exist. Then I wanted to know what happened here. Well, what happened was they changed it's no longer a criminal offense if patients wait all night in their soiled diapers, if there's not enough staff, and basic forms of abuse, neglect, and mistreatment. It's no longer a criminal offense. It's what's called a administrative error. So now instead of the attorney general getting involved in holding these places accountable, it's an administrative error where all they have to do is write out paperwork that they're going to address the issue, send it over to the health department where it gets rubber stamped and nothing gets done. Well, who did that? Whoever changed that from a criminal offense and took that out of the power of the attorney general and put that into an administrative error where we are now needs to be arrested and gone to prison, because there's people dying because of neglect, abuse, and mistreatment because they did this. This is what the whole deal is. And like you were talking, the average person does not know what you know, Rick. Okay? The average person does not know what I know. They don't know. And then once they know, they don't know what to do about it because there's no leadership. What do? Well, you hold your elected officials accountable. You don't vote for anybody unless they're willing to defend our rights and make sure laws are enforced. That's what they're elected to do. Defend our rights, make sure laws are enforced, and the public health is protected. And if they're not going to do that, then you don't elect them. And if we can't find anybody to elect that has the backbone and courage and decency to do so, then you go out and find them. You go to the shops, you go to the stores, you go out and you find decent people that are honest and have the courage to do this, to get the job done right, and stop just picking the bottom of the barrel to elect just because they're Democrat or Republican. That's the deal. Rick, I sent you a video of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., all right?
Okay.
It would be critical. If you could, I don't know if I could send it to you now.
Yeah, you can,
if you could run that, this would answer everything that you're addressing. It would show your viewers what they need to do in order to begin to make your country and our country a better place to live in. Okay.
This is Robert Kennedy or RFK Jr.?
No, Robert Kennedy.
Robert Kennedy.
Robert Kennedy. I'm going to send the video on your phone. Okay.
Yeah.
If I could, hang on a minute, and hold on.
Hopefully, it's not. There's no copyright issues. What about the music?
No, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, doesn't mean it's not copyright.
Well, you can't run it. Well,
it depends. I don't know.
Rob,
yeah, you send it to me. I'll figure it out.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, I'll tell you. Let's take a short break. Okay. We'll come back, and That'll
Very
give
good.
Chaplain Paul a moment to send me this and get it set up. Ooh, it's like another Maverick Midnight Matinee short form version, abbreviated on the other side of this.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching.
The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, we're going to run. This is not, the show is not ending. We have more. Don't go away. I'm going to run this just as a segue. I've got the video. Just need a moment to set it up. So stay tuned. This is like a preview or trailer before the big main feature.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media publish things that simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are mavericks. We are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And Paul back in. I'm going to do a quick copy to make sure that we don't lose our channel over it or anything crazy. This video up to introduce it?
No. Okay. It is the essence of what we're supposed to be as a nation and as a Dr. Martin Luther King. You could watch that and use it at a different time, or if you want to run one now, the motivation that we all need.
Yeah. So my...
Okay. Well, that sucks.
Contains historical footage. Has no Creative Commons license, no public domain statement.
You can't?
No.
What about the Martin Luther King one I sent you?
Again, this is going to take me a bunch of time. We're probably best to save this maybe for another night.
All right. Well, here's what the essence of it is.
Yeah.
It is that every time somebody strikes out against injustice, or to help improve the lot of people or to improve the quality of life for people. He sends a tiny ripple of hope that connect with millions of other people around the world that are doing the same thing. And it has the power to bring down the mightiest walls of oppression. This is what Robert F. Kennedy, the video, you can go on YouTube and find it. It's called
Sure,
Ripple
I'll put the link in the Rumble chat so people can go view it.
Martin Luther King said, "A man dies when he doesn't stand up for what's right. A man dies when he doesn't stand up for truth. A man dies when he doesn't stand up for justice." And that's what happens. We die on the inside. And he said, yes, when you do that, you risk chastisement, you risk ridicule, you risk being laughed at, you risk personal injury, jail time, imprisonment, and death. He said, but it's better to go through life with a scarred up body than go through life with a scarred up soul, having done very little or nothing to help those that are suffering and to stand up to the injustice of the world. See, well, these are not taught in school. What's taught in school is obey authority, do what you're told, go to work, go home, be a slave, and keep your mouth shut. And that's not the way things, it's not that we are to constantly be questioning authority and constantly holding them accountable. Otherwise, they will be corrupt. The founding fathers said every 20 years, the government gets so corrupt that it needs to be completely abolished and a new one, fresh blood, be put in. Well, you know what? They buried that. We don't, the ability to do that and the instructions to do that are in the Constitution. Well, they've made it to such a degree that we don't have the will or we don't have the know-how or the ability to actually do that, to remove the government and inject a better one with, well, like I said, with decent people that are going to be dedicated into standing up for social justice, protecting our rights, enforcing the law, and help to uplift the nation. We have a sewer, is what we have now. They're taking trillions of dollars and pissing it away. Meanwhile, my daughter lost with 4 children, going through divorce. 4 children. The oldest is 13. The youngest is 1. All right, my grandchildren. $840 a month she was getting for nutrition has been canceled because the state of Arizona is bankrupt. They're making it very difficult for people to get on access, to get on any type of help. They're making it very difficult. $840. So we took up the slack, so much so it almost put our house into foreclosure. Right? I asked my elected officials, how many are in my boat, fighting for this cause, fighting to help people in need, trying to lift up our daughter, trying to keep a roof over our heads. You know, if I could do it, you could do it. If I could do it, anybody could do it. So all of you out there that going to work, going home, you know, and just being in that comfort zone, you got to step out because we're next in line. Sooner or later, we or someone we love are going to be in these facilities. Sooner or later, we or someone we love's rights are going to be violated, and you're not going to know what to do, and you're going to be taken advantage of because we haven't been taught. We don't know what to do when our rights are violated. Oh, I'll get an attorney. I'll get this. Yeah. Good luck with that. Tried that, done that. It goes nowhere. And then you reach a point where you say, what do we do as a state, a nation, and a people when rights and laws that are there to protect millions of lives, the safety and well-being of millions of people are all of a sudden ignored and violated? What are we supposed to do? Well, the answer is in the Constitution. The answer is in the Bible. Stand up for righteousness. Stand up for what's right. Stand up for truth. Stand up for justice. That's what we're supposed to do. Okay?
Yeah, and that being said, as we just kind of bring things to a close tonight, I hope that my arguments made sense and maybe helped bring people around to a place where it's easier to find a way for everyone to live together. But what you just said, I think that resonates with me as well, because the answers are in the Constitution, but they're also, for many people, in the Bible. And whether the United States is a Christian nation or not, I also have said many times that I think our society, Canada, USA, in many respects has lost its moral compass. I view the Bible as not just a book of religion, but a book of philosophy, from which there's a lot of wisdom that can be drawn, a lot of answers in there for people, especially when you're looking for a way to help others. And so, whether it's a Christian nation or not, nothing stops you from looking to these works to find the answers and to find a path forward to do the right thing and use your superpowers for good, never for evil. Chaplain Paul, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Is there anything else you would like to add as we just wrap up for a very final brief thought?
Rick, always remember, Jesus loves you and so do I. Okay? Keep up the good work. Keep up the fight. All right? You're not alone. Like Robert F. Kennedy said, there's people around the world that we're all fighting this in our own way. We are a ripple of hope. Okay? You're a ripple of hope. I'm a ripple of hope. There's many of us around the world. And we when we find each other, then we rejoice because we realize that we're not alone, and there's other people out there that are fighting just as hard in their own way for their own causes, and we help to lift each other up and encourage each other. We may not agree on everything, but we agree on one thing, that the world, human beings need to be treated humanely and not like animals. And if we have it in our power to create a world where people are loved and treated humanely and living decently, then let's do it. I don't know. That's my spiel. You know me. I go on and on. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I think you made a lot of sense tonight. And with all of that, we'll leave you with this tribute to all those corrupt politicians out there who thirst for power and money. So misguided they are. They are the tards. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
They're not stupid, they're just dumb. Running their mouths with a digital thumb. I think they're tough, but they ain't that hard. Pity the fools, they're the tards. Retarded, can't see straight, full of rage and second-rate hate. Retarded, trying so hard, screaming at ghosts. They're the tards. No real thoughts, just mob and wine. Marching circles, toe the line. Quick report, cancel, flee. Ain't got nothing but misery. Retarded, head full of noise. Broken tools with shiny toys. Retarded, playing the card. Pity the fools. They're the tards. Hey, hey, shut it down. No more truth in tards. Retarded, they ain't slick, fixing nothing with their angry clicks. Retarded, crawling in shards, pity the fools. They're the tards. They're the tards. They're the tards. No brains, no heart, just keyboard guards.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.